In Spain, a meal doesn't really end when the last plate is cleared away. The food is finished, but almost nobody actually gets up from the table. Instead, chairs lean back, coffee gets poured, and the conversation simply keeps going. This stretch of time has its own name, and it's treated as its own small event. It's called Sobremesa, which translates roughly to over the table or upon the table. It isn't about the food anymore. By this point, the food is beside the point entirely. It's about staying exactly where you are, for no particular reason except good company. A sobremesa can last 20 unhurried minutes. It can just as easily last several hours. There's no set end time, and asking for one would rather miss the entire point. So here's the real question. Why would an entire culture protect empty plate time? The answer says something about what a meal is actually understood to be for. In many places, a meal is treated mainly as fuel, something to finish and move past. Efficiency gets prized. Plates get cleared quickly, the table freed up for whatever's next. Spain quietly rejects that framing, at least when it comes to a proper, unhurried meal. A meal isn't finished when the food runs out. It's finished when the conversation does. And conversation, unlike food, doesn't come with a fixed portion size. During Sobremesa, a small espresso or a digestif often appears, though it's genuinely optional. The drink isn't really the point either. It's just a small prop for staying a while longer. You can have a full, proper Sobremesa with nothing on the table but a glass of water. What actually matters is presence. No rush, no phone, no half an eye on the clock. In restaurants, this custom shapes the whole rhythm of service quite noticeably. Spanish waiters generally won't bring the check until it's specifically requested. Rushing a table to turn it over faster would be considered genuinely rude there. A restaurant that hurried its guests would quickly get a reputation for poor hospitality. That's a strikingly different logic from many fast-paced dining cultures elsewhere. Sobremesa has real roots in Spain's older agricultural rhythms and family patterns. Large midday meals, once shared by extended families working the land together, ran long naturally. The heat of early afternoon made a slower pace almost a practical necessity anyway. Over generations, that natural slowness solidified into something closer to genuine cultural value. Today, family gatherings on weekends often center almost entirely around Sobremesa itself. Grandparents lead stories. Cousins argue playfully. Old family history gets casually retold. Children grow up watching this unhurried rhythm long before they fully understand it. By the time they're adults, staying at the table simply feels completely natural. It isn't treated as idle time, or wasted time, or time to feel guilty about. It's treated as one of the actual points of gathering in the first place. The custom exists well beyond Spain's own borders too, especially across Latin America. Mexico, Argentina, and Colombia all maintain their own strong versions of the tradition. Each region adds its own particular rhythm, its own preferred drinks and small customs. But the underlying instinct travels remarkably well across every version of it. The word itself has old roots. Sobra means over, mesa means table, so sobremesa literally means over the table. Centuries ago, the word first described the tablecloth itself, the cover left spread out after the meal. By the 1700s, writers had shifted the word toward the lingering itself, not the cloth beneath it. The habit crystallized around Spain's old agricultural calendar, long before anyone wrote it down as a rule. Farm families once returned home for the day's main meal in the early afternoon, not in the evening. Fields left in the punishing early afternoon heat simply weren't worth returning to right away. So the meal stretched, coffee appeared, and an unhurried rest naturally followed right after it. Spain's famous siesta and its sobremesa grew up together, one flowing gently into the other. Neither one was ever really about laziness. Both were built around the honest logic of the climate. Spain has its own separate tradition of unhurried talk too, older even than most sobremesas.
It's called the tertulia, a regular gathering built specifically around conversation, not around a shared meal at all.
Tertulias took root in cafes by the early 1800s, some of them still open today. Writers and thinkers gathered there for decades, arguing gently over coffee that mostly went cold. A tertulia is public and often built around ideas. A sobremesa is private, built around family instead. Both rest on the very same quiet belief. Real conversation deserves far more time than it usually gets. Even today, that old cafe spirit lives on in something as modern as a podcast or an online forum.
Spain protects unhurried talk in more than one place and more than one form at once.
Sunday mornings bring their own separate ritual, usually well before any sobremesa even begins. Around midday, friends and neighbors gather for vermouth, a sweet fortified wine served as an aperitif. A plate of olives or crisps usually appears alongside it, just enough to sharpen the appetite. Vermouth hour isn't really about the wine either. It's a smaller warm-up for the lingering still to come. Order a vermouth around noon, and it can quietly slide toward lunch, and then toward sobremesa besides. In recent years, younger Spaniards have been rediscovering old neighborhood vermuterias, once nearly forgotten. Outdoor terraza tables fill entire plazas across the country, rain or shine, weekday or weekend. A busy terraza isn't considered a problem to be solved. It's simply what a lively afternoon looks like. One widely cited study found the average Spanish sobremesa runs about 45 minutes on an ordinary weekday. On weekends, that same study found Sobremes commonly stretch past 2 full unhurried hours. A deck of cards or a set of dominoes often appears once the plates are finally cleared. Nobody keeps score too seriously. The game is really just another excuse to keep sitting together. Children absorb the rhythm of all this years before anyone explains a single part of it to them. They learn, mostly by watching, that a table can hold a whole afternoon and not just a meal. Visitors from faster-paced countries often notice the difference within their very first Spanish lunch. At first, it can feel strange, even slightly wasteful, to just keep sitting once the food is gone. Most describe the same shift. Within a day or two, the lingering starts to feel like the whole point.
Stay a little longer. Let the conversation breathe. Don't rush toward the door.
Some Spaniards describe Sobremesa as where the actual best conversations tend to happen. Not the polite small talk during the meal itself, but what comes comfortably afterward. Deeper topics tend to surface once everyone has relaxed and settled fully into their chairs. Debates, memories, half-serious arguments, and genuine advice all tend to emerge here. It becomes less a meal and more a kind of loosely structured, unhurried gathering. Younger generations, shaped by faster modern schedules, sometimes shorten the custom somewhat. A quick coffee after lunch might replace what once stretched across several unhurried hours.
But most describe still valuing the underlying idea, even in its smaller modern form.
The instinct to simply stay a little longer hasn't really disappeared, even if the length has.
During difficult stretches, like periods of lockdown, many families rediscovered its value directly.
Suddenly stuck at home together, some found themselves practicing an extended sobremesa daily.
Several described it afterward as a genuine, unexpected gift buried inside a hard season.
More time, forced but ultimately welcome, spent simply talking with the people closest to them. So step back and consider what Sobremesa is actually protecting underneath the coffee and chairs. It isn't really protecting extra time at the table for its own sake. It's protecting the specific, easily lost feeling of not being rushed toward anything else.
In busy modern life, that feeling has become genuinely rare in a lot of places.
Meals get scheduled tightly between other obligations, eaten quickly, cleared, and forgotten.
Sobremesa insists that a meal can be the main event, not just a pit stop.
And that the best part of a meal might actually come after the food itself is gone.
There's something worth noticing in a culture that treats lingering as genuinely productive.
Not productive in the usual sense, but productive for relationships, memory, and connection. You don't need Spanish sunshine or a large extended family to borrow the underlying idea.
Just the willingness occasionally to stay seated a little longer than feels strictly necessary.
For another coffee, let the plate sit. Let one more story get told before anyone gets up. Nobody needs to check a clock to know when a good sobremesa is actually finished.
It ends naturally, whenever the conversation itself finally, gently runs its course.
Not a minute before that, and rarely exactly when anyone originally expected it to. That's really the whole quiet philosophy tucked inside a custom with no fixed end time. Let the good part of the gathering happen after the obligation of eating is finished. Somewhere in Spain right now, plates sit empty while an old story is still being told. Coffee cups are being refilled slowly, nobody checking a phone or glancing at the door. The meal ended a while ago. The gathering, quite deliberately, hasn't ended at all yet. And nobody at that table seems to be in any particular hurry to change that. Outside, the afternoon light shifts slowly across the plaza, unbothered by anyone's schedule. A waiter passes by once, notices the table is still full of talk, and moves along. Nobody signals for the check. Nobody checks a watch. The story simply keeps unfolding. This is what a Tuesday afternoon can look like, not just a special weekend occasion. Ordinary days carry the same quiet permission to slow down, if anyone chooses to take it. That's really the heart of Sobremesa, an ordinary meal, treated as worth lingering over anyway. Not because the occasion demands it, but simply because the company does. Eventually, someone will stand, stretch, and suggest it might be time to head home. Even then, there's rarely any real rush behind it, just a gentle, natural close. The table empties slowly, the way it filled, unhurried from beginning to end.